everyone. It is episode 42, the very last episode of 2020. And I was going to do my Philippines show, but I'm going to give a little bit more time to that so that I can edit it and make it super badass. But today I wanted to invite my amazing coach for the last, 3.5, almost 4 years now?
Yes.
Barb Wade for episode 42. And today's theme is fierce self-advocacy. Advocacy. Barb, thanks so much for being here.
Oh my gosh. Of course I would. Oh, what a joy.
Yes. So hold on. I was thinking I have to turn off this heater because I'm soon going to get really, really warm. But let's just maybe dive into just how we met and what you do and all of that stuff. And I could probably say it, but then I'll just be promoting you for the ages. So why don't you, in your words, Barb, explain what you do?
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I'm a coach and a speaker and an author, but primarily a coach. And I work with typically high achievers on fulfillment, on self-advocacy, which we're going to be talking about today, on making tangible change in their lives. And in particular, my people are usually, like I said, pretty accomplished and they've got a lot to show for themselves, but they've hit this point of dissatisfaction or burnout or kind of like, why am I not happier? I have these things. Why am I not happier? I mean, things are okay, but I'm kind of here. And I'm no longer feeling meaning or inspiration, or I'm losing my drive. I'm kind of around midlife typically, and I want to figure out what's next. So I've got executives and entrepreneurs, and people from nonprofit sectors, and just people who are more type A, typically more willing to take action, but just not sure maybe what direction to go. And in a way, that's kind of where you were at when we started, isn't it? So.
Yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to mention about how we met, and it was very interesting, and this is going to go so beautifully with today's theme because this has been the journey that I've been on for the last 3.5 years that we've been working together, is this idea that I was actually working with another coach at the time, and I had a year-long commitment. I kind of felt like things were not ideal in April, and I started kind of peeking around and, starting to get a little bit more antsy and frustrated. And then it got to, I think, maybe June or July, and I actually found Barb's name on an email, and I think I was reaching out to you because I wanted you to speak on my summit, which was one of the things that I was learning, which you know all about as well. Yep. And you said no. But it was interesting because I think you were at a point where you were making a shift in your coaching practice as well, right? Mm-hmm. So it was one of those things where I was like, oh, this is really intriguing and really interesting. And I reached out, and then I was like, oh yeah, I think you had offered, to have a conversation. And then it became this thing of, I was in this coaching relationship that I wasn't really happy about. And I felt like I had to stick with it because I was, I made that year-long commitment, and I don't, break commitments. And there was a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And I got to a point in October, and I think we started working together in July, late July. And by October, I was at this point where I was like, I'm done. I have to get out of here. I can't, this is not healthy for me anymore. And you walked me through this beautiful self-advocacy journey to really cut my ties with this coach. And not to say that this person was a horrible person or anything, but we were just not a fit. Right. Instead of waiting 2 more months and just enduring this pain, I was able to stand up for what I needed and break that relationship. And here I am, 3.5 years later, in doing that even more so in every aspect of my life, in my relationship with my husband, in, the way that I negotiate with my kids and friends, and just being able to selflessly, I guess, say no sometimes because, I'm such a loving person and want to make other people happy, but not at the detriment of my own happiness.
April, I think there's a teaching point just to point at for a second that's even in the story you just told, which is that definitely we make commitments, and I'm all about integrity to our commitments. However, there's a higher level commitment we all have to living our truth and our own self-advocacy. And that commitment supersedes other commitments. So if we make a commitment that we intend at the best, with the best information we have at the time, and later new things shift and we become aware it's no longer aligned and it's at a detriment to us, our bigger commitment, our superseding overarching commitment to self-truth and self-advocacy means that we have to go renegotiate that other commitment and say it's no longer a fit. So that's a really important point just to stop on for a second, because I have clients who get hung up on, well, I made this commitment and I'm a commitment keeper. And I like to frame it up that, yes, of course, and I'm sure you keep a majority of them, but if a commitment begins to no longer be aligned, there's just a hierarchy where there's a higher level commitment, and the commitment is to your truth and your well-being. And then in renegotiating the other thing, you always have to trust it's in the highest good of all concerned, even the person you might be breaking up with, or the job you may no longer be staying at, or whatever the thing is you're renegotiating, to come from the belief that that's for the highest good of me, which means it's for the highest good as well of all concerned. Yeah. And so as long as you just told your little story, I just think that was the big learning when you took the courageous action to get yourself out of the thing that no longer felt like a fit, and to kind of reinvent what it means to have a commitment and to get more in the gray zone, around it.
Yeah. And I think that even just that event was such an empowering thing for me. And so this is a preview for the conversation that we're going to have in a little bit after we get through all of the introductory stuff. But
I know, isn't that funny? We're jumping in, but go ahead.
But I mean, and this is the stuff, I'm listening to Barb and I'm like, this is what I hear, have been hearing for the last 3.5 years. And now, I've been also sharing this with my clients as well, because I think that they are going through similar things in their life situations as well. And so many people experience it. So stay tuned for more of that conversation in a little bit. We're going to do a little more fun stuff just so that you can really get to know how amazing Barb is and why I've been working with her for so long. And I'm so blessed that this conversation is happening today. But so one of the questions that I ask all of my co-hosts is the question, what do you geek out on? And I tell people, most of the people that I have on the show, they're really passionate about their job. So I try to stay away from that because that's probably what we're talking about anyways. But is there anything unique or a fun fact that you can share that you tend to geek out on that people might not know?
Well, I do have something to add. You gave me a little preview that you may ask me something like that. And I thought, okay, what's not work related? So the real most recent thing that's been about 6 months now is one of my teenage daughters is a furry. Okay. Now a furry, for those who don't know, is it's an offshoot of Comic-Con. It's an offshoot of the people who dress up for Comic-Con. And the furries are people who dress up as fully, mascot style animals. And they go on conventions and they do public service and they meet. So what we geek out on here at this house is making these furry costumes. So just for the hell of it, I brought one to show you just for a second. So this is one of the ones we've made. Okay. That's called an angel dragon, a Dutch angel dragon. Right. And my daughter wears this and wears the little, the little paws that go with it, those kinds of things. And we have 3 of these now. And so the basement is like fur everywhere and glue gun and pieces of foam. And so
we're making them like completely from scratch. It's not like, okay, we just bought this, because that's what I would do. I'd be like, I know,
completely from scratch. It is more work than I've ever imagined it would be. You really start from scratch, and you're carving foam and gluing and sewing, and takes hours and hours and hours to make them. But so we've really been getting into that. It's been a nice bonding opportunity for us. Do
you have a guide of like what you're creating before you make it, or is it just out of creativity?
We have the idea, and then we've watched a lot of YouTube videos on how to shape it right. So if she wanted to make this dragon, for example, we've watched YouTube videos on the basic head shape of a dragon. And so we kind of follow what we've seen done, and then she kind of knows the colors and style she wants. And so we have to go get the fur, and we got to make the little horns out of this clay stuff. And I mean, it is a big undertaking. But then she goes to these 3-day conventions, and she goes volunteering places with little kids wearing the suit, and so it's been fun.
That's amazing. She's like a college mascot someday.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting because for sports and stuff, they always have a mascot person.
Yeah. One of our best man in our wedding was one of our college mascots,
Oh,
and
really?
so yeah, so we joke around because you have to be very animated when you're in a costume, right? Because if you just walk like a person, it's not as fun. So
Yeah.
everything is exaggerated, and
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's
yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
good
It's a little side project. So
with a nice visual.
right.
All right, and so the next thing is that I have this fun game that I've been
Oh,
using to
okay.
ask some good questions.
Ooh.
We don't know what I'm going to pull out of this box, and I don't re-ask the ones that we've already done. So I'm making my way through. I wonder if I'll ever get through all of them. But Barb, you get to pick a question, and we'll find out what it is in just a second. But there are three categories. One is break the ice, so like more of an introductory question, but still, thought provoking. There's get vulnerable, which is a little bit deeper, maybe might carry a little bit more emotion. And then there's laugh a little, which are a little bit more of the fun, random questions, if you'd like. So, which one would you like to do?
Gosh. Let's do laugh a little. I mean, when we're
Okay.
talking about the other stuff, I'm more than willing to be very vulnerable about my journey. So we're going to cover that. So let's do laugh a little.
All right, here we go. Okay. Oh, so the question is, well, it is, what was your favorite cartoon? Sorry, it's getting like, try to. What was your favorite
Oh.
cartoon when you were younger?
Okay. So my favorite cartoon when I was younger was Speed Racer. And I'm sure I'm probably dating myself because, I think, so being 50-ish, I'm in my early 50s now. Speed Racer, go, 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 Speed Racer. He's a demon on wheels.
I knew
Yeah,
it.
you can't possibly know that. You're so much younger than I am.
I know that they did like a radio edit version of
Oh,
the
did they?
song, I think, when I was a teenager. So I was like, oh, but then they had, I think the music video also had, I don't know. I don't know how I know, but I know that
Yeah.
they did play something like on the radio that was something Speed Racer related.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that was the bomb at the time.
yeah, I'm trying to think about which, because I think when I was growing up, there were a lot of those shows that were, not cartoons like Silver Spoons and like all those 80s shows, like Small Wonder. Like I love those shows. They're like, was it Webster and like Alf, like all of those.
Monkey Brewster.
Monkey Brewster, yes. But in terms of cartoon, I don't
Cartoon
know if,
stuff.
yeah, because there was so many, but I think I kind of want to say that Tom and Jerry was probably what I watched the most, whether or not I liked that the most. Or Rainbow Bright. I was totally blanking. Rainbow Bright was my favorite cartoon growing up for sure. But I watched a lot of TV, so there was like Tom and Jerry and just all of the
And always Scooby Doo.
Looney Tunes, Scooby Doo, He-Man and She-Ra, and oh my God, all of that stuff. But yeah, now that I think about it, Rainbow Bright was definitely, I had like the horse and the dolls, and I loved it. So
Oh, cool. Very cool.
awesome. That was a fun question.
Cool.
It's always interesting to see what people are going to are going to share and recall, or the questions that they ask in there. So, all right, the next piece is cheerful news. Barb, did you have a chance to try to look for a positive news story?
Well, I did. I looked for a positive news story, and it's so funny because I had it bookmarked on my laptop, so now I've got to recall. But what it is that the very first university is opening up a department that's going to study kindness.
Ooh,
And I thought that was so interesting. And now I'm kicking myself because it's bookmarked on my laptop and I can't recall exactly what university it was. But it is in the United States, and they are validating the study of kindness and the implications of kindness as an actual, topic of study, as something warranting study. And it's the first time it's ever kind of been validated as subject matter. And it sounded really fascinating and really interesting.
Kindness Initiative or Kindness Institute? No.
I don't recall.
Well, it's interesting when I did. Oh, wow! UCLA opened world's first institute to study kindness.
The Badari Kindness Institute, something like that.
La, 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 la.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just trying to Google it to see.
I'm pretty sure it
Padari
was,
Kindness Institute,
yeah,
so UCLA.
yeah.
Well, that's
So it's
awesome.
UCLA, so that's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Huh.
When does that start? I just closed the window. I'm trying to
Well,
look
they
at.
just announced it because I was looking for a somewhat recent
Oh yeah.
positive news story since you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they've gotten under full swing yet, but it's really exciting.
Yeah. And so this is funny. I'm going to just be honest. And I was like, I had this on my list of things to do yesterday and I didn't, but since I have my sources, I'm going to find my positive news story, which yours is definitely awesome. I love this, but there is a video, and maybe this is just because I'm getting so much into video lately. There was um, an Amazon delivery driver did a happy dance and it was caught on camera. I'm guessing with one of those like ring type of door
Sure.
things. So he did a happy dance after the homeowner left some snacks out for him. How nice is that? It's just like
Oh,
random, and I could share this, but I just found that on
oh, yay.
so
Cute.
I think that during this time of the year, I think that there's just so much gratitude and niceness that comes around, and so like it's especially fun at this time of year to like look for stories, especially all the ones that are visual, the ones that are video are always the ones that I really like to like.
Mm,
So
sure.
yay! So positive news, continue to spread. Leave some treats for your Amazon drivers because Lord knows that I have spent a ton of money on Amazon for the
Me
holidays.
too. Me too.
Oh my gosh. It's just so easy to have things delivered to your house. So, all right, let's talk about self-advocacy. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. And I know that we talk about this, Barb, all the time, but I'm super excited now because we get to really dig in and talk a little bit more. And I get to share you with everyone and all the lessons that I've been learning so much for the past few years. So, one of the things that I wanted to start with is that, I think that there's a lot of conversation about the term self-care.
Hmm.
And I think that, a lot of it is like, giving to yourself, and that is a form of self-advocacy. But I also feel like I'm hearing a lot from people that the term self-care is starting to be overused, or people just assume that it's like go and take a bubble bath or go and get a massage and go spend some money to do something. But when you take it to the level of self-advocacy, it becomes this different thing that is a lot deeper and actually more impactful than just the concept of self-care, in my opinion.
Hmm.
So as somebody who teaches this stuff, how would you define self-advocacy, and how would you say it is similar and maybe even different from self-care?
I think it's a great question. I think self-advocacy is a bigger topic area, and I think self-care falls inside of it, certainly.
Yeah.
Because self-advocacy is all about really what is self-love in all the different flavors of self-love.
Yeah.
And that can sound a little woo-woo, self-love. It can sound a little soft. I like self-advocacy as a better term because it reflects being engaged with who you are and what your truth is, standing up for yourself, setting healthy boundaries, giving yourself positive reinforcement, resisting the voice of the inner critic, taking time for self-care. So self-care falls inside of it,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Not giving your sense of self to other people's opinions, but sourcing that from the inside out,
Yeah.
pursuing the things that feel aligned and declining the things that don't. All of that falls under self-advocacy, including that you may, take a couple hours outside of work to go perhaps get a massage. That kind of falls inside of the larger context.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've been a coach for many years
Yes.
and have so much wisdom, but when you started, because I'm always so curious about like people's journeys as a coach, and I feel like the things that I stand for when I started are still kind of what I stand for, but it's very much heightened and evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Were you doing, early on in your coaching days, was this the stuff that you kind of geeked out about, or was it an evolution of experiences that you had in your life as you were a coach, or just growing up, or just anything like that?
Great question. And even though I've been coaching since 2000, so in 2020, it'll hit my 20-year mark. Don't think I don't still struggle with this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just to be really super clear, and have to continue checking myself. And I work with my own coach. And people are always like, you work with your own coach? I'm like, yeah, of course. Because when it's your own stuff and it's like right here, you can't see it clearly. And so I'm not on the other side. I don't know that one ever gets to the other side of the issues that they're here to learn about and teach about. But to answer your question, my journey was more, I started in the entertainment industry after college and spent about 12 years climbing up the ladder of entertainment. And that was a time period where I, in all honesty, was very, very insecure, even though I was a very big achiever. But the big achieving was an attempt to feel stable and validated and impressive to other people and loved and appreciated and included. And a lot of that had to do with just a painful peer relationships in childhood, being bullied and being excluded. And my sense of self had so much to do with how do I fit in and be included and appreciated and approved of, that all these things I was achieving really came from a hole, came from kind of a lack of feeling these things on the inside. And so I got very successful on the outside because I'm smart, and what would happen was I'd get to these places of achievement and I'd feel solid for a very short period of time. And then I'd start to notice the anxiety creeping back up and the feeling of, oh my gosh, is the other shoe going to drop? And is this thing going to go away? Is this job going to go away? Or am I going to be able to prove myself? Or what if I screw up? And I just noticed how none of the outside achievement was ever kind of, quelling the fear that was kind of low grade. And so that began my journey of personal growth. So I started therapy and I started going to different workshops and doing retreats and as a participant and trying to figure out what was going on the inside. And slowly through this journey of the personal growth work, I began to put the puzzle pieces back together that, oh my God, I'm totally abandoning myself. And what does self-love even mean? And like, how could I actually be more kind to myself? And how could I, instead of constantly comparing and judging, how could I, figure out what I really wanted and maybe start setting initial boundaries? And I used the entertainment industry career as kind of my laboratory to be trying out these things I was learning in the personal growth work. And I started learning how to say no to things that didn't feel good. And then I go, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. You said no. Like, it was silly. It felt silly, but they were huge wins, at the time. And it ended up being so transformational. That work became so transformational that I thought to myself, you know what? I got to go into this work and help others with it, because it is the thing in my life that has been the most profound, is learning how to go from, self-criticism and shame and low self-esteem to this place where over a period of years, I felt, I guess, self-love, self-advocacy, grounded. Not that I wasn't displeased with myself sometimes, not that I didn't make mistakes I had to clean up, but the beating up was practically eradicated. The beating up myself, the comparing was practically eradicated. The focus on, protecting myself in the world and making loving choices was I was a different woman than I was at the beginning of the journey. And that's when I said, I got to do this work. So I went back to school. I did a 2-year master's degree program in spiritual psychology, opened up my coaching practice, and began working in this area really quite from the beginning. Yes, it's evolved, and the tools and the skills and my understanding of it, and the depth of the exercises and experiences and concepts that I share have evolved. Mm-hmm. But the thing that really got me into this subject matter was my own personal journey, and then saying, I've got to give back, and it'll also keep me working on this stuff to be immersed in the field as a professional as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, I know that as coaches, we're not supposed to impose our experiences on our clients and all of that stuff. But I think that, still that connection with somebody, when you choose somebody as a coach, is understanding or going through some similar version of it, because it can be daunting sometimes to not, watch somebody kind of take those steps before you in maybe a completely different situation, but also paving the way to show what's possible. And what I love that you've done all these years, and I do this with my clients too, and they tell me that they love it, is that I share a lot of the things that I'm going through in my life because I want people to know that I'm not perfect and that I'm still struggling with the same things. And, some of this stuff doesn't necessarily go away, but I have to constantly mirror myself back. And that's like working with you and having people who can remind me that this is where I used to be and that I'm still kind of continuing to try to grow. And so in those experiences, and all the things that come in the future, all of this stuff happens. And I think too, you were saying earlier that we still kind of are on this journey and we're still working. And I even think that some of the things that I struggle with, I think one of, when it comes to self-advocacy, I think that I found my worth a lot in the things that I was doing. So the more that I would accomplish, the more successful that I would feel. But then I would take on too many commitments and then put myself in a place where I was hurting myself more than helping, and having to strip myself from feeling like that external sense of self-worth was coming from how much I was doing. It was something that I needed to shift, and it's been such a hard shift for me because that's how people know me. And when I start to go quiet or I start to do less, people are like, "Where's April?"
Right.
They think that something's wrong, and I'm like, nothing's wrong. I mean, and I'm struggling with this idea of doing less, but like in reality, I think this is what I want. I mean, we all kind of want to be able to relax a little, right? So that has been part of my self-advocacy journey.
Right.
So in terms of the type of people who tend to struggle with being their own advocates, who would you identify? Or maybe there's not. I mean, I would think. I mean, I know that the A-type personality, the descriptor of who you work for, I mean, or work with. These are the people who tend to struggle, and sometimes they don't even want to admit it. But are there other types of people that you tend to see who kind of struggle with this concept?
That's an interesting question. I find these concepts kind of universal. I don't know that they fit into a particular demographic.
Yeah.
I think in our society, honestly, I think we are so conditioned to let outside success define us. I think we start learning that at a really young age. I think we start learning that approval by the teacher, it makes us good. And if the teacher's mad at us, we're bad, from pre-kindergarten, I think we start learning that if all the other kids like and include us, we're lovable. But if the other kids are excluding us, something's wrong with us. I think that is so ingrained in the human condition that I think there's a propensity for any of us to grow up in a place where we become very people-pleasing and very focused on getting approval and wanting to achieve. Now, some people succumb to it more than others. So it's not like everybody's suffering from this. There are people who, for some reason, maybe their parents kind of overcompensated for some of the societal messages. And there are people who've grown up with very intact self-esteem, who don't try to people please and who have strong boundaries and who really, know who they are and what they want. That exists, of course, out there. But I find more often, at least the people that I, maybe draw into my life as clients, as well as my intimate friends and people that I'm close to, share the similarity of, wow, I was never encouraged to get quiet and to learn who I am. I was always encouraged to see how I performed against other people. Even what is my grade in school in this class is against other people. Yeah. So I think we all have a real potential. And the question, for this issue, and the question is, how much is it running you? How much in your 20s, and I'm saying in your 20s because that's kind of when you move into a young adulthood, are you making decisions based on externals versus how much are you making decisions based on the truth of who you are and knowing yourself and self-advocacy? And that's where I think the range occurs. And the people who find me, like myself, are the people who, for whatever reason, did a lot of great accomplishing of external things, but it was kind of in a way for the wrong reasons, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it is really interesting because I think as you're growing up and as you're young, you don't necessarily know what you want. And, in part of my journey, and of course, I love my parents and I don't ever want them to think that it's their fault that I decided to go down this journey where I currently am. But I had a lot of interests and I knew, just the structure of the way life is. You kind of have to work your way through school, then you pick a major that you go to in college, and then that kind of informs your career. And I wanted something that would make me successful. And I had a love of music and theater and arts. And I also had some massive love for science and technology. And I went in the direction that my parents kind of like nudged me to go, which was the science and technology route, but also because when I looked at where I was in terms of my level of confidence in either one, I felt like I had a higher success rate in the technology area. So I went with an engineering degree, and now I'm almost 40 and I'm sitting here like taking ukulele lessons and doing all of the musical things that like I
Right.
wish I had more confidence to do when I was younger and to just go down that path. I don't have regrets, but I'm just thankful that now I'm getting reconnected back to those roots. But I still
Yeah.
love technology. I love
Yeah. Yeah.
the latest gadgets, but it
If
was,
nothing else, we can parent our children differently, as
yeah,
best as we can, and keep them open to all their choices and all the different flavors of themselves, and all the different parts of self, and not put
yeah,
them on such a linear path.
yeah.
So,
And I think, you were saying that a lot of people, this might be more of a universal thing. And I agree with that. I think that we all have just the way that society works is there's very much, a perspective and a persona, especially in the entertainment industry, which I know that we've had conversations about that. It's just, you have to be an actor and you have to look a certain way in order for, to get that attention. And you need to, there's a lot of just profiling to fit the character, which, is kind of necessary, but also, just what they want to put on TV is, what's going to sell the most. And so there is a lot of external validation in just our entertainment and the source of stuff that where we get our like joy and our time to unwind and relax. And so it's everywhere. And I was thinking about kind of where does the source of this challenge come from? And, I think that fundamentally in terms of the types of limiting beliefs and inner critic talk that happens when we talk about personal development, I think there's this very common feeling among everyone that they don't feel like they're enough. And especially in today's day and age when like you have to keep up with everything and everything's moving at lightning pace, that we have to keep on pushing ourselves to the latest and greatest all the time. Do you
mhm.
agree that that's kind of
Yeah,
the,
absolutely.
the, the inner talk
Absolutely.
of what's
Yeah.
happening? Um,
Yeah. I mean,
so
there are studies about how phones and social media are having our kids constantly seeing all these wonderful things everyone else is doing, because people post their best stuff on social media, and then comparing themselves and feeling they need to keep up with all of that. And it's a big concern. I would agree.
yeah, absolutely. So if we start thinking about, there's this issue exists, whether it's universal or is more prominent in people like me who just like really love making other people happy, but at the same time are acknowledging that we don't want to do it at the own detriment of our own happiness. Um, and maybe you see this better or you can package this better than me because I was kind of experiencing it as you were my guide over the last over 3 years. But I think if we had to outline a process of, and this is not, by me any means like, okay, here are the steps, 1 2 3 and it's done, because I think I still struggle with it. Barb, you mentioned that you're still working on it yourself, but what is this process that we go through from being in this space where we're letting society dictate what we do, the choices that we make, or the people that we care about having their choices or their desires kind of inform the choices that we make, and how do we start moving towards this place of self-advocacy, especially when we know that, sometimes our choices need to take in mind other people's feelings and opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say?
Okay. Let me give something that I think will be usable, because of course it's a process and it's a journey, but, and you know this from our work together, but one of the most powerful concepts that was shared with me somewhere along the way had to do with when we're facing a decision. And a lot of the time that's when we have to decide, am I going to honor what's true for me, or am I going to people please so I'll be liked or loved or approved of, or am I going to make a decision so I'll be safe, so I'll be okay, instead of what would I really want to do if I had no worries about repercussions. So a decision point. And the concept had to do with that all choices are ultimately rooted in either fear or love. Now, fear can look like a choice rooted in the need to feel safe, the need to control, the need to be loved, feelings of scarcity or lack, fear of missing out. A decision rooted in love can be a decision based on trust, based on abundance, based on creativity or generosity. So those are kind of synonyms for fear or love. So what I would start doing early in my journey is, okay, let's say, I was asked to be on a committee. I'll just make that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want to do it. I would want to say yes. And then I would stop and say, okay, what's the foundation of the yes? Is it fear or love? And I would have to see, is it because I don't want them to be mad at me? I want to look like a participator. I'm afraid I'll be excluded and I'll be gossiped about if I'm not on the committee. I feel guilty that I don't contribute enough, because all of those reasons would be fear-based.
Yeah.
Or is it, I really want to contribute on the committee. I think I have some stuff to really add to the committee. I think it'd be fun to be on the committee, right? Because the same answer, yes, I'll be on your committee, could come from fear or love, right? Like, you can't tell what someone's motivation is in their choice. You got to look at what was the underlying, foundational reasoning here. And I would practice that. If it was fear, I want to be liked, loved, safe, approved of, I'd have to stop and I'd ask myself, what would love say? And I love those four words. What would love say? If I came from love, if I came from trust, if I came from abundance, and if I came from, I'm going to not worry about people being mad at me. I'm really going to see, if I came from a good, loving, trusting place, what would I choose? And if it was like, I would decline. My life is too full right now. I've got little ones and blah, blah, blah. And my life is just too full. Love and abundance and trust would say thank you, but I can't. Then I'd have to start practicing. Am I willing to take that action instead of the fear-based action? Mm-hmm. So it kind of broke self-advocacy down into a usable tool.
Yeah.
Does that track?
For sure. And I think the way that I love this, because I'm like just smiling because I'm like, I've heard this so many times, because I've needed to make these decisions so many times, and she would always be like, what would love say? And I'm like, what would it say? And what I feel when I'm going through these types of situations, and it's so funny that it always comes down to like making this decision. We have to make decisions constantly. I think we made a decision right before. I was like, when am I going to air this episode? And I was like, what am I going to do? And I just was like, screw it. I'm going to just make this choice. And it makes life so much easier to be able to make those decisions and do it with no guilt. I think that's kind of how it's translated into the work that I see with people. I think a lot of times people will sit there and like scuffle or like shuffle their feet and like, I don't know what to do, because there's this feeling of, if I choose what my head is saying is right, like then, this will just cause the least amount of stress, but then the least amount of stress for everybody involved. But then here there's this other feeling of like, but then this just makes me feel like blah, blah, blah. And so for me, I think about a lot of, I think I rephrase the question to myself if nobody was going to judge me,
right,
what would my answer be? And I feel like every single time we got on a call, it was always like, okay, here's the decision that I have to make, X, Y, Z. And this is different from the other times where I have like options and like there's many options, but this is like, more of a yes or no type of deal, I think, when I'm like, do I want to say yes or do I want to say no? And a lot of times I want to say no, but I don't want to say no because there's this extreme level of guilt in some aspect. And to
Mm-hmm.
identify where that guilt is sitting is kind of
Mm-hmm.
key to start unlocking your way to say, you know what, this is what I choose.
Yeah.
Now,
And by
Barb,
the way, it's
oh,
relevant in work examples all the time as well. I happen to use a personal example. I'm off the top of my head, like being on a committee, but they're all kind of work choices we make because I need the money. That's fear-based. I
yes,
better take this client, or I better push this thing through. I
yeah,
better, attend this thing, and if I knew I'd be taken care of, if I knew I'd be safe, if I knew I'd be loved and approved of, those are the wonderful rephrasings that you do. Like, if I wouldn't be judged, um, what would ultimately be in my highest good?
yeah,
And am I courageous enough to take that action? Because at the beginning, it's like, oh God, if I was really trusting, I would decline this, but I'm not sure I'm ready to because my fear is so strong. But at
yeah.
least I can discern the difference. At least I know I'm working toward the courage, even if today I don't have it. So it can be a stepping stone tool to go, well, love and trust would decline. I may not be quite ready yet. And
Yeah.
maybe next time I'll be even more ready.
Yeah. And that's something that I want to dig in a little bit too, because there's this idea of like you can discern the difference between like if I had no guilt and whatever, this is what I would say. But then, you still might choose to go that other direction where you know that you're not, but then, and not to say that that's bad or wrong, because then I think people are like, okay, well, but then I'm making the wrong choice consciously, and then they feel guilty about knowing that they're making the wrong choice, and then it's just this spinning wheel of death, and it's not healthy, right? And so there's been times I know, I've been in situations where I was in an argument with somebody, or I knew that I was I was feeling that I was correct and I was right in my assessment of the situation, but I still chose to do the opposite action in order to honor myself and be a little bit more at peace. And I know that you've walked
Mm-hmm.
me through a ton of those situations where I say like I'm doing this to kind of protect myself. Can we talk
Mm-hmm.
a little bit about that? Because you say it so much better than I do, but I'm like, here's what.
Absolutely. So give me an example of exactly what you mean, because I want to be sure
Uh,
I'm tracking you.
so Um, I think that there's times, and I was like, Mom, if you're watching this, I hope don't get upset. But there's been times that I, was in an argument with my mom, and both my mom and I are very strong-willed women, and we have our own opinions. And you know, I've taken, certain tactics where, most of my life I just was like, okay, yes, mom, I'm going to do whatever you say because you're the mom. But then as I became my own mom, I like wanted to have a voice. And I think I tried to speak my voice and it just caused more conflict. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got to some points where there were arguments that we had, some that I felt were not rational, or I was trying to understand her point of view, but I still also felt very strongly about the way that I felt, but then decided to just let it go.
Oh, okay. So
But then, and it's like I kind of
yeah,
like
totally know what
you
you're
should
talking
know how I feel, but at what point does it not serve me to try to like put my voice out there? Because there's this part of the self advocacy where you're saying like I'm going to speak my truth and I'm going to do this, and sometimes it might not even be worth it to do. And so there's also this extra level of self advocacy where you're like your truth, but are you even strong enough to just like hold it in and know? I mean, and this could even be an example when you're just having a conversation about politics with somebody else who has
about.
fundamentally different views about a certain topic, and maybe you'll never see eye to eye, but you so badly want your friend or your colleague or your family member to see eye to eye with you, and but maybe they're not. And so at what point do you just let it
Sure.
go and not feel guilty about keeping your mouth shut?
Okay, so this is a fabulous question.
Yeah.
So what happens sometimes when I work with people around self-advocacy is they pendulum swing to, I need to speak my truth at every minute, at every time. If I don't, I'm not advocating for myself. Like, you can get into the headspace, like if I let my mother steamroll me and I don't make my position clear, I'm not advocating. Or if I don't make sure that I'm, espousing my political beliefs to this person on the other side of the aisle, then I'm not advocating. So people can go almost sometimes to the other side and still be in a way of black and white thinking. Might be better to speak your truth than not. But the truth is, as you're referencing, there are times where we might discern that the most loving action is to not get into that conversation. But do you see what I said? It's still the most loving action. It's not out of fear I'm not going to confront my mom. It's not out of fear I'm going to drop it and let it go. It's the most loving action is for me to let this go. And as out of love for her, I'm going to do it her way by choice, not by resentment, but by choice. I'm going to do it her way because that's also minimizes my stress, which is the most loving choice.
Yeah.
So there are many times where I know the most loving choice for me is to compromise, but it's still the most, so I might be withholding my truth in certain circumstances, or I may decide this person is so closed that my speaking my truth isn't going to land in a constructive way. But I will, recognize that therefore it's not like I'm too afraid or something. It's more loving for me and more loving for them that I compromise or that I don't get into this or that or the other thing. So I think to answer your question, if you can really feel it's a more loving choice, it minimizes my stress, it minimizes pain to someone else. I know what my truth is. That's the most important thing. I know what my truth is. And I'm proactively deciding this isn't the place I feel like, standing on the hill with my, little stake in the ground. Then that can be a very empowered choice to make, right?
Absolutely. See, you said it so much better than I did.
No, you were great.
I just love hearing it because now I can just play this video again. I'm having a struggle. What would love say? Yeah. Barb has all of these amazing sayings that they just stick in your brain, and I think a lot of my clients will know what those are because I'll be like, my coach said.
I hope you're passing them on. Use them in good health. Anything that's helpful, pass it on. Pass it on. Yeah.
The one last question on this topic before we start to close is this idea of, we talked about how sometimes we still struggle with our own stuff. This self-advocacy is a journey and it doesn't seem to end. And it just, there's always going to be new challenges in this because it comes with every subsequent decision that we make in our lives. And would you say, this is maybe getting a little bit vulnerable, and I'll share mine as well, but is there an area where you feel like that you struggle most personally in terms of advocating for yourself? And I can start by saying I think that one of the things that I struggle with most is this idea that if I don't even know how to say this. I think if a lot of times I do still, even though I know that I shouldn't care about what people think externally, there's this little piece of me that's like, hey, I want to be seen. Just to get that validation that everything's okay. And a lot of times what I used to do is I would just put it out there and just hope that I would get the response that I wanted. But I also preface it now with just this idea of, I've been afraid of this. I'm going to post it anyways. And here's my justification. And here's what I'm doing out of self-love, so that I'm kind of preempting it. But I think that there's also still times to this day where I'm thinking about what so-and-so might think, or I get stuck in comparison when I'm on social media, or, I see certain things and I think I still tend to struggle with this idea. And I think I've told you too, in my 2020 plan, there's this place of, one of my themes is fierce confidence. And I tend to struggle with this idea of promoting myself because I don't like it when people push, are salesy to me. And so I don't do it for myself. And I'm trying to still find that loving way, but I feel like I'm not advocating for all of the good that I have to offer, and it's frustrating. So how about you?
Well, let me ask you, what's the question?
The question is in your situation. I was giving my example to I
love your example, and I'm following.
But is there an area that you personally feel that you struggle most when it comes to self-advocacy? Is it like having a conversation with one specific person, or is it just, do you see a trend where it's the hardest for you?
Okay. I'll tell you a place that I'm working on with my coach right now. You may be surprised, maybe not surprised. I have probably the hardest time in my boundaries with the kids. And so I've gotten pretty good with Tim, my ex-husband, who's lovely and one of my closest dear ones in the world. And I've gotten fine with clients and boundaries as a coach. It's tough with the kids because they're 13 and 16 now. And I so want to be the ideal mother. I so want to be so present and capable and reflecting to them their truth and supporting their advocacy. And I'm trying to have them grow up without some of the issues that I ended up having and having all this work I had to undo. And what can happen is I can end up where I fall off the priority list. My coach is constantly working with me on the boundaries that I need to get better at setting when my vision of the mother I want to be is so strong that I overdo for them. I overdo. I don't take the time I need to have alone time or to reset or to get things on my to-do list done. I jump in quite quickly when they need or when they want. And it's an area I'm definitely struggling with. It's probably my trickiest area.
Wow, that's, yeah. I mean, I definitely see that. I think too, as they start to get older. So I'm like, this is probably what I'm going to be dealing with in a few years. This idea of like just them being so dependent to then having them, advocating for them to have their own independence. And then there's this feeling of like, oh my God, what do I do with this extra free time? And how do I, spend more time honoring myself? So,
well, for me, the place I'm getting tripped up is I need to give them more autonomy and independence. That is appropriate for their ages. And I'm on the other side, I overdo. I over-engage to make sure everyone's safe and happy and well-developed. I might prevent them from stumbling. I might prevent them from consequences that would be really to their benefit to experience so they can grow and develop their own agency. And so I'm glad you've asked, because I'm really working on stepping back and giving them that room. And in doing so, having more to fuel my own gas tank. Yeah.
Love that. See, self-advocacy shows up everywhere.
Oh my God, it's everywhere.
It's been such important work that I've been working on, and I will continue to work on with you. And I'm super blessed that we were able to have this conversation and share. I have one more question before we go, and this comes from somebody in my audience who has graciously asked a question.
Okay.
And I tried to pick one that was kind of in alignment with our conversation. So the question is, what's the secret to always feeling confident about everything you do? I love this question. I was like, Barb can answer this question.
Oh
and
my
I'll
gosh.
answer too, but what are your perspectives about that question?
Okay. What's the secret to feeling confident in everything you do? Well, it's funny that I have two different ways I could answer it. Because on the one hand, I almost want to say it's not a fair question, because I think that trying to be confident in absolutely everything you do doesn't really express the human condition.
Yeah.
I think what's important about growth is setting a boundary even though you're nervous about it. Saying no even though you're not confident about it, but it's the right thing. So having confidence, I don't know that I'll ever get to having confidence in every boundary I set or decision I make, but I want to answer it another way also, though, which is this. If I know what's true for me and I make the decision based on what's true for me, then no matter what happens externally, and this is hard to remember all the time, I can come back to, honey, you made the best decision you know how to make. You made the best decision you knew how to make. Whatever might happen. So we're going to trust. If I don't turn on myself, if I stay in a place of self-love, self-advocacy, okay, I made this decision. Right now, it looks like I really missed a big opportunity. Let's say the decision was I said no to something, and it turned out, looked like, oh my God, I missed this big opportunity. As long as I say, kiddo, I love you and I'm so proud of you. You said no, that felt very clearly like the right decision at the time. And I love you no matter what happens, no matter what it looks like you're missing, no matter what it looks like is happening on the outside. You checked in with yourself. So I acknowledge you for your decision. Then I can, in a way, be confident when I make decisions, be confident when I set boundaries. It doesn't mean I'm confident they're going to approve. I mean, when you set boundaries, sometimes people rail and fury at you for setting a boundary.
Yeah.
But I can be confident that I'm taking care of her. So I dialogue with myself a lot. Like I just said, hey, babe, you know, I know that was scary, but I'm so proud of you. And even though that person's mad, and even though that person doesn't see how it's going to work out, you did what was true for you. And if I keep acknowledging that, I end up noticing over time, I do have more confidence in my decisions. It doesn't mean confidence everyone else is going to love my decisions.
Yeah.
It means confidence that I'm being congruent with what my gut feeling is, what research I've done. I don't just do gut feeling, a decision. I do research, I analyze, I do gut feeling, I get quiet, I mix it all up, and I make the best decision that I can. Yeah. So that would be my tip, you know, is the self-love and the self-acknowledgement in the face of every decision. And what would you say?
Yeah, I was like, what you said. But I think if I had to give an alternate answer, I think that there's the, you know, being somebody who has like struggled with the idea of perfection and is recovering from that, eternally recovering from perfectionism. I want to be as close to it, but I also know that that doesn't really exist. I think it's embracing the imperfection and also acknowledging that you might make a wrong decision and that's okay. So just this idea of exactly what you said. I'm making this decision. This is based on all the information I have. This is the decision I'm making. If I was given other information, then maybe I might make another decision. But I think this is something that I wrote in my book in terms of my beliefs and my values. And one of the things that I realized in terms of why I didn't feel confident was because I didn't necessarily know what I believe. And so I went through this exercise of stating what I did believe, but I also made sure to say that at any given time, I can change my beliefs based on new information. And I think we have to give ourselves grace in knowing that we know what we know and we make decisions based on that. People make decisions based on what they know. And if we're not transparent or we don't try to do what we can to, you know, make sure all of those things are known, then people are making decisions based on the information that they're given. And we're all trying to do that. And so to be confident is to know that even if you make the wrong choice, still going to be okay.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that that's the biggest learning that I've gotten from our work together. And you know, I can say, you know, and also just doing improv and just being able to say, you know, I might totally flop, but that's okay. I mean, that's kind of what the show is all about too, you know, doing it live and having all these, oh crap, I need to turn off my heater. Oh no, I didn't do XYZ. There's always a fix for it. And if we start to train people to understand that we're all not perfect, then maybe we won't set standards so high in entertainment and media and everything that we do.
I think people want real.
Yeah. So
people want real.
So now you just got an hour of real. So anyways, this was an amazing conversation, and thank you so much, Barb. I know I've been trying to get you on the show for such a long time, and I'm so happy that we were able to do that now. And obviously, if you guys need any sort of, you know, commentary about how amazing Barb is, I can give you all of that and then some, but you have all of her contact information in the description in the video. And thank you guys so much for going through a second year of Cheerful Conversations with me. This is episode 42, so we will see you in the new year. Thank you so much, Barb.
Bye.
All right, bye guys.